Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, celebrity interviews, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again, both on the radio dial here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM and WYADonline.com. We're glad that you all could be with us. Also, joining us are our friends at iHeartRadio and Amazon Music Podcast. We're glad you all could be with us as well. Well, October has a lot of different things that's been recognized, but one that's coming up quickly is October 29th. That is World Stroke Day. So why is it so important? Well, on average, every 40 seconds, someone in the U.S. has a stroke. Well, what exactly is a stroke, and why is it so prevalent among blacks today in the United States? Here to talk to us more about that, we're excited to welcome neurologist Dr. Mark M. Murray to our program. He's going to talk to you guys not only about the signs and symptoms, but also why we have to be so educated when it comes to strokes and also who it impacts. Dr. Murray, really appreciate the time today.
Hey, Cyrus, thanks for having me. Thanks for helping us get the word out.
Look, this is important. I appreciate this, especially for our radio audience here in Mississippi. Dr. Murray, so as I mentioned, that the stats show that every 40 seconds someone in the U.S. has a stroke. So I guess an obvious question would be, what exactly is a stroke?
Yeah, Cyrus, that's right. There are about 800,000 strokes in the United States every year. And a stroke is, we also call it a brain attack. And it basically happens when you don't get enough blood flow to an area of the brain. That can happen for one of two reasons. The most common reason, and one most people think about is the one where you have like a decreased blood flow to an area of the brain because there's a blockage there or a narrowing in a blood vessel. We call those ischemic strokes, and those, again, lead to not enough blood flow to the area downstream. And the second one, which is not as common, although we do see it quite a bit, is a bleeding type stroke. We call it a hemorrhagic stroke, and that's when a blood vessel ruptures either because of an aneurysm or a site of weakness. And we see those in about 15% of the cases. But either way, it leads to the same thing, where you don't get enough blood flow to the area downstream, and so brain cells die. So that's a stroke.
Right. Yeah. So, with that being said, I mentioned in my introduction, Dr. Murray, and I'm sure our radio audience will appreciate the answer to this. Why is it that black men and women seem to be at higher risk then for strokes?
Yeah, this one really hits me near and dear to my heart because it affects me and my community, my family, my friends a lot. And really there's no magic reason. The real reason probably is that, or most likely is that, there's not as much quality health care in the black community. Either they don't seek it out or there's not as much availability. And because of that, because we don't see primary care providers, because we don't go to our annual checkups or we don't get those annual checkups, we're more likely to have at least one of the risk factors for stroke, chronic conditions like high blood pressure. And then when we do have those chronic conditions, it's usually poorly treated or not treated at all, so poorly controlled. And so that leads to us having strokes at an earlier age and having a worse outcome when we do have strokes.
Yeah. And I think that's why I'm so glad that we could have you on for our audience here, Dr. Murray, to share this information, because I know this is going to be a benefit to them. So let's go through some of the things they need to know. What are some of the signs of a stroke, and what is it that they can do to be able to maybe prevent a stroke from happening?
Yeah, we have this acronym, Be Fast, and so not only does it tell you the signs by the letters, but it also tells you what we want you to do. So first thing is, if you notice any of these things, we want you to be fast and call 911 right away. We get a lot of people who say, I can drive someone to the hospital, or even worse, I'm going to sit home and see if I can shake it off, and that's not something you can do with a stroke. You can't shake a stroke off, right? So those letters, if any of these things happen suddenly, stand for, B is for balance. So if anybody has problems with balance or coordination, E is for eyes. So if they're having problems seeing or they have double vision, the F is for face. So if the face is looking like it's drooping on a side or if it looks like it's twisted upon itself, that could be a stroke. The A stands for arms, and I really want you to think of arms and legs, particularly if it's on the same side. So if there's any weakness or decrease in sensation or even sometimes numbness and tingling in an arm or an arm and a leg, that can be a stroke. The F stands for speech. So slurring of your words or not being able to talk or people who are acting confused, like if it's confusion that happens suddenly, then that can be a stroke. And the last one's time. We want you to know what time it happened, or if you don't see it happen right in front of you, what was the last time you saw that person at their baseline, the last time they were well? And jot that down, and again, be fast and call 911. And knowing those signs or symptoms and getting 911 is the best thing we can do to give people help.
It definitely is near and dear to my family as well. Dr. Murray, my aunt, my mother's sister, had a stroke while at work, and she did not realize what was happening, and she literally drove herself home, and come to find out she was having continued to have many strokes as well, and so her condition worsened. So it definitely is something for our audience to be aware of. Now, we mentioned, of course, some of the aspects, either not of course going in to see a doctor or not having that access. Why is it important, though, to act with urgency and call 911 at the first sign of what we believe is a stroke?
Yeah, first of all, unfortunately, your aunt's story is one I hear all too often. Someone who says, well, it's not that bad, maybe I just need to go home and sleep it off, and they continue to have small strokes, or it's really that sign of a big stroke that's going to happen that leaves them with a lot of disability. The reason it's so important to identify these things and to get help so quickly is that we know that, by studies, for every minute somebody who's having a stroke can lose about 2 million brain cells. So you think about it, even if there's a 10-minute delay, then that means you can lose up to 20 million brain cells. And unfortunately, our brain doesn't work like other parts of the body where you can get some growth back and some healing. When you lose those brain cells, they're gone and they don't come back. So it's really important that if you see one of these things we talked about in BCAS, that you go ahead and call 911 and don't try and drive yourself to the hospital. I hear that all too often too. First of all, if you have a stroke, you might not be able to see, you might not be able to drive, you could have an accident. But second of all, by calling 911, you get EMS personnel there, and they're medical professionals that can start the care right then and there at the scene and really get you that treatment started faster.
Yeah. Such a great thing. Again, everyone, Dr. Mark M. Murray has been our guest, sharing with us some valuable information today for our audience. As I mentioned, Dr. Murray, October 29th is recognized as World Stroke Day. What advice will you have to our audience about stroke education and awareness?
Yeah, I really want you to go out there and I want you to seek out more information. And the first thing we can do, particularly in our community, is really start to establish that care with a primary care provider, a doctor, a nurse practitioner, a PA, someone who can go over your risk factors for stroke. There are a lot of them, and we talk about risk factors that we can actually modify. 80% of strokes are preventable. I would love to see a day where you put people like me out of business, so we don't have the need for me. But right now, we really need people to go out and talk to their primary care providers and understand their own risk for stroke. And then once they understand them, they can do something to help you decrease those risks by treating some of those conditions you may have.
Wow. Great information, Dr. Murray. Also want to let our audience know they can visit strokeawareness.com as well, strokeawareness.com. We will link that up for our audience joining us online. For our radio audience here in Mississippi, we're going to put it on our Facebook page. Dr. Murray, thank you so much for the great work that you're doing and for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, sorry. Thank you so much for helping us get the word out, and thanks for having me.
Glad to do it. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. Now let's go make today amazing. Take care.